Dasha, Winston Churchill, a remarkable figure of the 20th century. Winston Churchill was one of the most iconic figures of the 20th century, playing a pivotal role in the victory of the Allies in World War II. He was born on November 30th, 1874, at Blenheim Palace near Woodstock, England. A descendant of the Dukes of Marlborough, one of the most influential aristocratic families in England, Churchill's father, Randolph Churchill, was an aristocrat and a member of Parliament. His mother, Jennie Jerome, was an American from New York, one of the few Americans of her time to settle in Europe. Interestingly, his maternal ancestors were from the U.S., and his great-grandfather on his mother's side had fought against the British Empire in the American War of Independence. Churchill's family moved from Dublin to London, where he attended school. He was not a particularly successful student, but excelled in fencing, even winning a championship among schoolboys. In 1893, he entered the Royal Military Academy, passing the entrance exam on his third attempt. By 1895, he became a cavalry lieutenant and began his military career, serving in India and Sudan, where he participated in suppressing anti-colonial uprisings. In 1899, Churchill traveled to South Africa as a war correspondent during the Second Boer War. He was captured and held as a prisoner of war, but managed a daring escape, crossing into British-controlled territory through a Portuguese colony. He returned to South Africa, this time as a soldier, and took part in military operations. Early political career. After gaining fame as a war hero, Churchill was elected to Parliament in 1900 as a member of the Conservative Party. However, he later switched to the Liberal Party, only to return to the Conservatives later, demonstrating a certain political fluidity. In Parliament, he showcased his eloquence, earning a reputation as a gifted orator. Before World War I, Churchill became the First Lord of the Admiralty, a position equivalent to the Minister of the Navy. Though he had no formal naval or military training, his role was crucial as Britain, a global maritime power, faced a rapidly expanding German Navy. During the war, Churchill faced criticism for the failed Dardanelles campaign in 1915, but was reassigned in 1917 as Minister of Munitions. In the aftermath of World War I, Churchill became Secretary of State for the colonies. He opposed excessive reparations against Germany and was skeptical of the dissolution of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, viewing it as a potential counterbalance to both Germany and Bolshevik Russia. His harsh policies in British colonies, particularly in Ireland, made him a controversial figure with lingering animosity in some regions. World War II and leadership. Churchill foresaw the outbreak of another major war in the 1930s. After the Munich Agreement, he declared war inevitable. He became prime minister in May 1940 during the Battle of Britain, a pivotal moment in World War II. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, Churchill welcomed the USSR's entry into the war despite his disdain for communism. He and Stalin exchanged terse communications, often marked by the latter's bluntness. The UK supplied arms to the USSR even before the US entered the war. At the Tehran Conference, Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin discussed opening a second front in Europe. While Churchill preferred operations in the Balkans, Stalin and Roosevelt pushed for an invasion of Normandy, which eventually took place. Churchill was wary of Soviet influence in Eastern Europe, fearing it would lead to communist domination. His strained relationship with Stalin reflected his concern for the post-war world order, even as he worked alongside the Soviet leader against Nazi Germany. Taschak, post-war years and the Cold War. After World War II, Churchill lost the 1945 general election to Clement Attlee, whom he disparagingly referred to as a sheep in sheep's clothing. Though this was a significant setback, Churchill's political career was far from over. In 1946, during a speech in Fulton, Missouri, he famously declared that an iron curtain had descended across Europe, marking the start of the Cold War. In 1951, Churchill returned as prime minister, focusing on combating socialism. He retired from active politics in 1955 and lived out his final years as a celebrated statesman. Churchill passed away on January 24, 1965, at the age of 90, and was honored as a national hero. Criticism. Despite his legacy, Churchill remains a polarizing figure, particularly in former British colonies. Historian Tariq Ali accuses Churchill of responsibility for the Bengal famine of 1943, where a combination of flooding and inadequate British aid led to an estimated 3 million deaths. Churchill's policies during the famine, including diverting food supplies away from the region, remain contentious. Additionally, Churchill faced criticism for agreeing at the Yalta Conference to the repatriation of individuals who had fled the Soviet Union during World War II. Known as Operation Keelhaul, this led to the forced return of around 2.5 million people, many of whom were sent to Soviet labor camps. Legacy. Despite his flaws, Winston Churchill is remembered as a leader who guided Britain through its darkest hours during World War II, and as a staunch opponent of both Nazism and communism. His complex legacy continues to spark debate and reflection.